So this is a little walkthrough for how to make pivot tables. If you want to see it in more detail, I'm going to show it a couple of times. I'm going to start in Sheets because Sheets is a slightly simpler, more lightweight approach, so you can see really easily what's happening. So you can replicate this in Sheets, or and then that might well be enough, or I'll then do it in Excel. So one of the questions that we had was, if you look at the licenses in Ireland, there are provinces. So all these counties appear in different, in one of four categories. So how can we count up how many counties appear in each province? And then I think also there was a question about how many pubs appear in each province. And so this is a common kind of question that pivot tables help us answer. So in Sheets, the way you do this is you used to go to data, but it's no longer there. You now go to insert and you say, I want a pivot table, please. And then you get this question, which you get in Excel as well. Generally better to put everything in a new sheet because, as you can see, this sheet's pretty full. So let's make and so we get a new tab down here, which we can rename, especially if things are getting, if the tab names are getting a bit big and long. So I'll call it Pivot 1, for example. And then we have two things. We have this is the table, which is currently empty. And when you click anywhere in the table, the little table editor opens up on the right. And then you click out of it and then it vanishes again. So once we're somewhere on the table, we have these options. And so we want to look at provinces. So we can organize things through the rows or through the columns. We can also filter, which we're familiar with. So we might want to just look at two provinces. And then we have the values, which are the thing they're going to count or aggregate or find an average of or add up for us. So rows is often simple to start with. So you can see here we have all the different columns in our table. We have the column of counties, the column of provinces. We've got numbers for 2005, 2006, and so on. So what interests us are the provinces. So we've said, let's have some provinces in the rows. And so the four provinces that appear are now taking up a row each. It does this grand total thing automatically, which you can just click here and remove. And so now already we have a sketch of how we're going to organize whatever the data is we want to look at. So what is it we want to see? What are the values we want to see collected? And so we will have a look here, and we want to see the counties first of all. We want to know, we want to see the counties organized in terms of the provinces. So there's not an awful lot you can do with counties because they're not numbers in our table. And we've got different options, most of which are only really relevant if you've got numbers, as in our other columns. Here we've just got the names of counties. So for example, if we were to say count, and say I'd like you to put in the counties and I'd like you to count, we'll get 0 because count is used for numbers. And so we're going to use count all. And we're going to say I want you to count every time something that appears in county has this province. So now we know that there are 5 counties that have Connacht as their province, 12 that have Leinster, and so on. And so it's dealing with these two. It's saying there's 1 for Leinster, 1 for Ulster, 2 for Munster, and it's counting them all up to give us this end result. And then I think we also have a question about the number of licenses by province. So you can add as many values in, and it will just keep adding to the right. So let's say we like to see the number of licenses in 2018. And there we are, they have added them up. Okay, so they've taken all the licenses, for example, Connacht, anyone in 2018 that has a province, which is Connacht, so probably starts here. It's added 464 to 369, etc., to get the total number of licenses for 2018 by province. And that will give you enough to answer those two questions. There's an important sorting mechanism here. So if you look at the rows that we've said at the beginning we wanted provinces to appear in the rows, but we can also say how we want our rows sorted. So the moment they're sorted by province, insofar as it's CLMU. But it would be more useful if we could sort them, for example, by province that has the most counties. So, okay, it's a fairly short list, right? We've only got 4 items, but with a longer list, this would become really important. So can we please sort it in terms of the counties? And you can see it now goes 3, 5, 6, 12 because it's ascending. So we could ask for it descending, and then we get Leinster on top because it's got 12, then Munster because it's got 6. So it's sorted in terms of the numbers that appear here. And of course, I think the last question involves sorting it in terms of the number of licenses and pubs in 2018. And here we are, 2,600, 2,400, 1,300 and 600. So now they're arranged in terms of, they're sorted in terms of these 2018 licenses. So that is, how would that work for the other question, which is party donations? It's pretty much exactly the same. It's always useful not to have too many columns, because then when you go into your little editor, for example, here, that's a lot of columns. Like it's pretty clear and pretty easy to understand what they are, but if you've got loads and loads of columns with funny names, it doesn't make it any easier. So here I've taken the party donations and thrown out a lot of the columns that I don't think we're going to need. So we do the same thing. We go to Insert, Pivot Table, New Sheet, Create. I'm going to give it a name again and call it Pivot 1. And now, what are we interested in? We are interested in the parties, I believe. So let's put all the parties. Now we could put them in the columns, right? Just as an example. We could say I want the parties running along the columns like this. And so now we have a column for each party. However, it's a little harder to for the eye to follow. So we're actually going to put them in rows like we did with the previous example. So it's just enough to click that, it'll disappear, and we'll go and do the same thing in rows. We'll add parties, and now we'll remove this show totals thing, and now we can see we have, a bit like in the previous example, we have all our parties. Super. Now the question is, what do we want the pivot table to add or aggregate or sort out for us? So what are the options? We could do postcodes, for example. And we could say, I'd like to know, this is not a very useful question, but you might want it to count how many postcodes each party has that were used for donations. That's not very useful. We could actually go for donor status and then filter, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. We could then filter and find out how many individuals per party, but let's not do that either, because it's getting a bit, as I said, ahead of ourselves. So let's put in what we're supposed to be here for, which is the donation, right? And here you can see that it generally goes for the easiest to the most obvious, and here it's added up all the donations, which I think is actually what we're looking for. And then it'll be enough to go and use the order for ascending, descending, and sort to get it so that you can get things organized by the biggest to smallest. But you could also, for example, instead of saying add up all the donations, for example, that each party got, you could say I'd like to know the count unique, which will be the number of, should be the number of donations they got. Yeah. So Animal Welfare Party got 1, Cooperative Party got 11, and so on. You might want to know the average donation per party. Okay, so you can see the Animal Welfare Party, because it had 1 donation of 20,000, has an average donation of 20,000. But you can see the others, that the average donation is 17,000 for the Tories, and who else is there? 40,000 for Labour, and so on. So it will aggregate or organize, add up, depending what you're looking for. So we were looking for a sum. You can also look for the biggest. Show me the biggest donation by party. So somebody gives 797,000 to the Labour Party. But we want some. We just want to add them all up. Okay, so that will get you the answer you need for, I think,